Hello and welcome to the PowerFish podcast. I'm Fish.
And I'm Ben. We're doing it again. Last episode, we told you to comment any question at all, no matter the context, and we would answer it in a future episode. We're doing it again. We have a 2-week buffer on these. We don't upload them, day or two after we record them. So we haven't even seen the last questions yet, but we'll answer them. Anything, literally any question. It could be, we said this last time, it could be a question you're trying to answer on a PhD thesis, or it could be a math question that you're working on right now for a test, or it could be something related to the episode. Anything. And we'll answer it in a future episode. But today, we're going to consult ChatGPT for some questions. We've done this before with moral dilemmas, and they were pretty good. So we're going to do it again with religious dilemmas.
Ooh.
So we got, I think, like 4 or 5 that we'll probably get into.
Yeah, time depending.
The
first one here, let's get right into it. Your parents are deeply religious, and their entire identity is built around their faith. You've lost your belief, but haven't told them. You know the truth would devastate them. Do you have a moral obligation to be honest, even if it causes them pain? My answer to this, just to get that right out of the way, is no. I think your faith is something deeply personal, and no matter the person, you are not morally obligated to disclose your inner beliefs.
Your faith or lack thereof.
Yeah.
I think maybe if this was reversed, the answer would be you are obligated to tell.
Because of the...
Well, I guess I'm assuming it's Christianity. And
right.
To be an evangelist, you kind of need to tell, which is the point of Christianity. But in this scenario, no, I don't think. One, you can just say you're doing them a favor because they think that you are going to burn in hell for all of eternity. And maybe it's best to just not worry them with that needless worry.
Right.
So I don't see. Yeah, I see no. I mean, if you have gone through life being open and honest with the current state of your life to your family, maybe it would feel kind of wrong. Because some people, I mean, I know this isn't our experience, but the families that are, there are families that are totally coherent in relation to what's happening in each individual's life. Like they update them on everything.
Right.
So, I mean, what if you're that person? Because at what point do they start noticing that you're not bowing your head and closing your eyes when everyone prays at the dinner table? And
I think it's I don't know, man. Like I still would hold on to the fact that not disclosing it isn't wrong. You have no moral obligation.
no, I don't think there's anything wrong with
But
it.
I think an intentional like pretending is maybe a bit rough.
I guess there's a difference between just not saying or not bringing it up and specifically withholding the information.
Well, that kind of honestly transitions into the second point on this, which is withholding your disbelief a form of respect or deceit? So respect in that regard, microphone, the respect in that regard is kind of what you were saying about sparing their feelings. You're not intentionally trying to harm them.
Right.
But deceit being you're not being as honest as you could be.
Right.
Lying by omission, I guess is what you could say. I kind of don't think it's either, though. I don't think it's either respect or deceit.
Is it lying? Yeah. Are you lying by omission if your mom asks you what sex position you had last night? You know,
Where did
personal
that come
things.
from? That's
Personal
out of
things
left
can
field.
stay personal.
Okay, I see where you're getting at. Yeah.
But I mean, let's be honest here. Unless you say, yes, I'm still a Christian. If you say it's personal, they obviously know that you're not anymore. You know?
Right.
So if the question is even simply asked, then you're backed into a corner.
Right. I don't know. If somebody in my family were to ask me about my faith, I think I would be vague. I don't know. I think I'd just be like, I don't know. What would I say there?
I might try to like pull some Jordan Peterson stuff out of my ass. Like try to come up with the most unintelligible but deeply meaningful answer I can.
I think I would go very vague and just be like, how is your faith? And I would just say, well, I try to learn and grow every day.
That's a good one. That's good. Yeah.
Just like that is true, but
that's good.
It not only is it that can be taken as not in regards to faith, but also learning and growing out of my faith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good answer. I don't know if I would have come up with something quite that quick. I might. That also is kind of just not the type of person I am. If they're gonna ask, I'm gonna answer. That's just more. That's just more my temperament. But I don't know. That's a good one.
I'm just in a situation like if like my grandma comes up to me and is just like, "Hey, you're gonna go to heaven with me when I pass." I'm not gonna be like, "Nah, dude, you're going by yourself." I'm gonna nah. That's not.
Grandma, don't you know there's 100% absence, not heaven? I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do that either, but I don't know if I'm not one for adumbrations, I guess. I try to be more clear, even if that's just kind of where I'm at, basically. If they ask, I'm going to answer clearly and plainly, but I'm certainly not going to provoke it. Because I'm in the very situation that the thing is describing. I don't want to, bestow the idea that I'm going to burn in hell for all of eternity in their minds. Because that decision to no longer be a Christian is the most detrimental decision a person can possibly ever make in the Christian worldview. So like, I don't know if I really want to just throw that turmoil at them. So, but like I said, if they want to know.
But to further complicate things here, though, or really just to ask the question again, but in a different way, does authenticity matter more than harmony? See, I said all that stuff before when we were just talking about it, and I said, of course, I don't want to, I'm going to dodge the question. I'm not going to, because I don't want to have them worry about me. But then you frame it a different way. Is it more important to be authentic or to have harmony? Now, when you ask it like that, it's more important to be authentic.
Right. Prioritizing being harmonious over authentic doesn't sound very good. That's literally just like, phrase it another way. It's like, a phrase that makes sense that I can't think of right now, but yeah, phrase it that way. Yeah, but no, it doesn't sound very good. So trying to keep the peace through shadow sentences rather than being authentic sounds bad. And that is exactly what you just described you would probably do. But before we said it that way, it sounded like a good idea. I don't know. I mean,
well, I think what it's doing is it's flipping the framework. One angle is, hey, don't you want to spare the feelings of your family? And then the other framework is, well, don't you want to be true to yourself? The way the question's being framed pulls you in a certain direction versus another. And I think ultimately, if you want to be consistent, you need to decide what's most important.
Right. I mean, it sounds bad, but at a certain point, I mean, harmony can be better. Right? Like,
right.
I mean, just taken to its logical extreme, if the entire world gets thrown into complete chaos with zero harmony because one person is a little bit too authentic to themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we're going to say, okay, buddy, put on a mask. We don't need to see your authentic self for the sake of the entire world. So, but that's obvious, taken to its logical extreme. It's not quite as obvious in a religious scenario. Like, what could it kind of depends on you. Do you feel like you need to be authentic to yourself, or do you feel it is more important to keep the harmony and to keep your family from, spiraling into turmoil over this?
I think the question becomes, what's to gain by being authentic in that manner with certain people? Because like I'll be more authentic with my friends than I will be with my family. And it's not that I don't care about my family. It's that I want to protect a certain image with my family. A more respectable image, because I'll act a fool with some other people, but I'm not going to do. Well, it's a lot like when we had a short out about this a long time ago about how you threw me under the bus when it comes to saying bad words, right?
Yeah, I took your respectable image and smeared it all across the floor right in front of your mother. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
and that was hilarious.
Now
unintentional.
I had that image, right? Not because I want to lie to my mother, but because her knowing that I don't have the cleanest language is going to do her no better. And it's not that difficult for me to just clean up my language around my mother. As a matter of fact, I find it respectful. So, like that's...
But you see, look, I 100% agree with everything you just said, but let's inject the context of specifically your mother into this. Your mother has a potty mouth. Okay.
She does.
That's why I thought that was okay to say that.
I'm not upset with you about that situation. That was like 2 years ago, at least.
Shoot, that was a lot longer than that. It's because maybe actually you might be right. It might have been. I don't
know exactly when it was. I know how many miles on my car ago it was.
Yeah.
Because for those
if anybody listening, if you want context on this, there's an episode quite a while ago where we talk about this story where Fisher's engine exploded at a Taco John's. But
to summarize, basically, the engine died when we were out on a little road trip, and I know what my miles were then was because it mattered for like warranty stuff, and I was at about exactly 100,000 miles, and I'm now at about 140. So it was 40,000 miles ago. However,
okay. Yeah, take that.
However many years ago that is.
Take that and do the time conversion with no context. Besides
I don't remember what I was talking about.
It was a while ago, but no, potty mouth and projecting a good image. Yeah,
right.
I totally get
the difference
that.
there. So one could say, well, you should speak how you always speak around your mother because that's authentic. But my response would be, it's not that much effort for me to just not speak poorly.
Yeah,
poor language.
I've heard this argument before. Be your true self. Like, what does that really even mean? Like, do you just, again, I'm a fan of taking things to their logical extremes. Being your 100% true self, like, act as if no one else is around, is sometimes just stupid advice.
Yeah.
It just simply is. Like, consider the person that sleeps naked. I'm like, this is the most obvious counter to the be authentic argument, but like the guy that sleeps naked, is he just going to be completely authentic himself and walk around naked in his family's house? No.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Or he's invited to a sleepover with some friends and he's just fucking nude on the,
right.
Like,
yeah. Be your authentic self around your friend. Like, okay. And maybe you'd say, oh, obviously we're simply just talking about personality, which that makes a little bit more sense. But even then, I still don't even know what that means, because sometimes I myself adapt to my own situation completely subconsciously. Like, I do things differently around people that I'm not even aware of at the time that I'm doing it.
I'll give you an example of this, actually. So I have several different friend groups. And so there's like you and I, and then I have another friend group, and then I have like a larger friend group. In that one friend group, there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of, sensitivity that goes on. We have some people who are a little bit more sensitive. And we all try to be a little bit cognizant and think about our actions and what we say to best keep the peace, right?
Yeah.
But then you and I get in a phone call and
none of that matters anymore.
None of that matters anymore. And I've had conversations where, because like there was conflicts in the group, and I would have to explain to people, just like, well, like sometimes, some of that'll carry over, and I won't, and I'll think I can be a little more open when I maybe shouldn't be. And it just depends on who you're talking to.
Right. It
That's my
totally
opinion.
depends on the person. Totally depends on the person. And you should, for not just for yourself, should you sort of modify your authentic self, whatever that is, when you're around other people, not just for your own sake, but for their sake. Like, if I treated other of my friends the way I treat you, we simply wouldn't be friends anymore, because they can't take that. They can't, they don't communicate in that way that we do. Like, but that doesn't mean I'm faking being their friend. Right? That doesn't mean I'm showing up in some way so I can be friends with them. It's just different strokes for different folks. And I know people around me do the same for me too. Like, it is just simply human beings. We adapt to the people we're talking to the social situations that we're in, and to the environment around us. It is simply that. You don't need to be one self always.
It's, to simplify it even further, it's the idea of knowing your audience.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And in the context of what we've been talking about with religion, if you're surrounded by, take your parents out of the equation. Even if I was with a religious friend, you know what? Probably just wouldn't talk about religion. If it's a sticking point. Now if they want to have a thoughtful discussion, then that's a totally different conversation. But if it's a sticking point where it causes a lot of tension, maybe that doesn't need to be on the conversation list.
Right.
Or, if they say something that's religious based and I don't agree with it because of the way not because they're wrong, but just because of I have a different worldview. Maybe I let it go, and maybe I don't challenge just because I can. Right.
Right.
That's
yeah. Agreed.
That's the difference there. And when it comes to a parent, you're not going to probably be having a lot of those challenging conversations anyway.
Depending on the relationship with your parents.
Depending on the relationship, because some parent-child relationships are built on like conversation and deep discussion. In those aspects, maybe you should talk about those things. Not because you want to convert your parents to atheism, because why? I don't know. I don't know why a person would feel compelled to do that. But maybe it's an opportunity for you and your parents to get to more deeply know each other. But in a lot of situations, all that's going to do is create stress and tension.
Right.
And is
with
that
no
helpful?
upside. Right. So that's basically just comes back to me saying, I think it depends on you. I think it depends on the person, on if it's better to stay harmonious with your family or be authentic.
Well, let's move on to the next one. I think we got that one squared away here. All right. You convert to a religion later in life and feel a profound transformation. But many people around you, especially those who knew you well before, are uncomfortable or see it as a betrayal of your previous values. So, subsection 1 here. Do you owe anyone an explanation?
So we kind of we flipped it.
Mm-hmm.
So I convert to Christianity right now.
Yeah.
Say I have a religious experience in my sleep or something. And maybe I'm a bad example because as far as religion goes, you're pretty much the only person that I even discuss it with.
It's not, yeah.
And so I don't have a group of friends that would feel betrayed. But let's say I have a friend group where I show up as an atheist, I guess, and I convert to Christianity. This friend group thinks I betrayed them. What was the first question?
Do you owe anyone an explanation?
Do I owe them an explanation? Kind of, yeah, maybe. I think I would think, yeah, because it depends on the context of the friends. Because like I said, if I have the friend group where I show up as one of the other atheists, right? And I mean, everyone has things that bond a friend group. And let's just say that this friend group all bonded over the fact that we're atheists. Then I would think probably, yeah. For someone like any other friend that I literally never bring the topic up for, like, no, it doesn't matter to them probably in the slightest. Unless they are also a Christian, then they'd just be pretty stoked, I guess. But I feel like I would, to some level, owe an explanation to
I just have
friends.
a problem. I just have a problem with the word "owe." That's the problem. Should you give an explanation? Probably. Do they have
do they
do they have a good reason for wanting an explanation? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you, as a person who has transformed in your belief, I don't know if you owe them an explanation.
I mean, if you have a group that is all bonded by the fact that you only do doggy style, do you owe them an explanation when you do missionary? You know, this is the same. It's a personal thing.
I still don't think you would. I think the explanation is, well, in that weird example, is I'm trying something new or something. But I don't think you owe anybody an explanation. I think it's just a different, a new evolution on yourself.
I don't know.
Could that create tension in a group that's, let's say, built on atheism? Sure. But at the same time, though, maybe you don't. Well, okay. I was gonna go at the angle of maybe you don't want to let them know and you want to keep it a secret. But in this prompt, they already know, so that's out of the question here.
I mean, I really think you should, and I really think they have a good reason to know.
I feel.
And all other things. They are in debt to begin
Right.
with.
Yeah.
Which
if you
aren't.
don't give an explanation, it is wrong, and you are
sidestepping a debt that you owe.
Yeah.
But you're not accruing a debt.
Yeah,
so,
that's because that's the thing is you're sidestepping a debt that you owe. How could that be the case when it's a personal religious transformation?
Right. Okay. So yeah, I guess the word owe. No, you don't owe them an explanation, but you really should.
Yeah. If the prompt said, "Should you give this particular friend group an explanation?" Yeah, because your entire we're assuming this, the entire friend group is built on atheism.
Right.
And
that's the bond here.
It only makes sense. Not that you should try to convert them, because that's not what you owe to them, or that's not what you should give to them. But if you have new information that you have found yourself, and when you were previously bonded by the previous information, you ought to help provide new information for the people you previously bonded with.
Right. And I think that would suffice as the explanation.
It's like if you and your friends were a bunch of flat earthers. And we got
atheists, sex positioners, and flat earthers.
Then you figure out Earth be being round.
Earth be being round. Earth be a ball.
Earth be a ball. And they find out, and they're just like, "What the flick, bro? What are you doing?" Like,
that's what flat earthers sound like.
Yeah, what the flick, bro? I think in that situation also, much like with atheism to Christianity, you probably should say, I've found this new thing, or I've had this new experience, and that's why. You don't have to believe with me, but this is what happened.
Okay. So let's actually relate this to the previous question. What if this friend group is instead your family?
And you once previously bonded over the fact that you were a religious family?
Well, let's keep it. Let's keep the atheist continuity and say that you were a secular atheist family that just took jabs, just took the occasional. Like, it's kind of weird for a family to bond over atheism, but let's just say
I know families like that.
Okay, so they exist. So let's say let's say you're a family like that, and you convert to Christianity. Then does that? Do you think that changes the dynamic at all?
Changes the dynamic? Yeah.
I mean, because then it introduces this whole, now you think that they are the ones that are all going to burn for all of eternity situation. And you have a moral duty to keep them from that.
So I think for the sake of still having a discussion, we probably need to remove the implication that if you're a religious person, specifically a Christian, you have to talk to these people. You are morally obligated,
right,
to preach the gospel. If that's the angle we're going, then the answer is always going to be yes, because the religious or the Christian dogma is you have to preach your faith to anyone you can preach your faith to.
Right.
So aside from that, should you, in a more practical application, I feel that it's different. I don't know why. I my suspicion why is that it's family versus friends.
Different in what way?
Well, it kind of goes back to being different around different people. So
Okay.
something in me and in my relationships, I have the way I am with my family and the way I am with my friends. Those two people are very similar people, but they are different and they have differences.
Right.
I
Agreed.
I guess for me personally, a profound change, a profound religious change would fall under the friend version of myself as opposed to the family one. And I don't know why. That's just maybe a personal distinction that I've drawn. But granted, when I was in the faith and I was strong in the faith and I grew in the faith, that was a profound religious transformation that I shared with my family. But also double granted, they were already religious.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't.
That is tough. Well, here's what I think is a pretty easy question to kind of go along with what we were already talking about. Should beliefs be private or public?
Oh,
I think it heavily depends on the belief, but I think on average, beliefs should be private.
Right. Well, I don't know.
Like I said,
I don't know. I think there's a difference between saying it should be private and it shouldn't be projected. I don't think there's anything wrong with it not being private if it's asked, depending on the belief. But I do think there is something wrong if it's projected, which unfortunately is the mission of Christianity. But
I think I don't know what I think on this, actually.
Well, if you say they should be private, that undermines the whole argument of being your authentic self when asked by your family.
But not all beliefs need to be aired publicly.
Sure, I agree with that. That's why I said I think there's a difference between projecting them and making sure they stay private. I think the vast majority, in my scenario, I think the vast majority of my beliefs, I am totally open to just stating when prompted. I don't think it's okay to always state them when not prompted.
And I think that's where I'm trying to draw a distinction, because what I wouldn't want is to say, well, belief should be public. And then you get people who are just, I don't know. There is a point, I think, where you're too open and you are not personally, but what am I getting at here? There are people that are more comfortable burning bridges and hurting others for the sake of voicing their opinions loudly. And maybe that's what you're thinking on the lines of projecting.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying you should project your beliefs because there's no prompting there. If there's a prompt,
I would agree. So for the most part, most beliefs that I have, if asked by people that I'm comfortable giving those beliefs to, I'll talk about almost anything.
Right, exactly. That's what I
guess this is a difficult question to answer. Should beliefs be private or public?
It depends on the belief.
I said that. Sorry, it depends on the belief, and it depends on the person who's asking or you're talking to.
Yeah, that's a very loaded question. Should beliefs be private? Yes and no sometimes, but sometimes not.
I think the reason I said on average beliefs should be private, I think what that means, what I was getting at there was, I think the prompting thing. Like, maybe you shouldn't go putting your beliefs on blast unprompted, but you should feel comfortable being able to speak openly.
This is, I would say, yes, in the context of us and where we are right now. Now, you kind of, if you're, if you believe that factory farming should be eradicated in America, because just about anyone under the sun would agree that it is just terrible, morally speaking. I feel like I would be doing a disservice by trying to keep that silent.
Right.
So I think there are some beliefs that should probably be projected.
The interesting thing is there are a lot of beliefs that shouldn't.
Exactly, but they feel they should.
Exactly. And one argument you could make is everybody should put their beliefs on blast so we know who not to listen to.
Well, that's the free speech advocates. That's the current state of Twitter. That's right. And it's a cesspool
right.
of absolute madness. So
how do you well, that's a dangerous thought I just had. My thought was, how do you decide what beliefs should be publicly made available? Like on a national scale.
Yeah, that's a big question. I don't know about that. Yeah. How do you decide who to censor and who not to? Yeah. What a question that is. I can tell you we aren't going to get anywhere near the answer to that, because we are not even remotely close to smart enough to tackle something like that. But
and I mean, in either way, there is something, we just talked about it, free speech, being an advocate of free speech. And while it can create a lot of problems, and we are seeing it, what is the better alternative? There just isn't one.
It's rough. Yeah. You can say, I'm a free speech advocate all you want, but you can also say with a straight face, speaking probably morally, both sides, maybe we shouldn't let anti-Semitism fly on Twitter.
That's true.
Maybe we shouldn't do that, because there's certainly nothing good that can come from it. But that's a violation of free speech. So, like,
it is.
You can speak from both sides. I think from a moral high ground, but treading that water is really tough.
It sure is, and we don't have the authority or the mental capacity to deal with it. So what were we talking about? We were talking about,
how do we
should beliefs be private or public?
Oh, yeah.
And how do you, out of everything we've said, I think the answer is you can't draw a conclusion to that question. And I think it depends. That's the answer. It depends.
Simply, it depends. Should you keep beliefs private? Yeah, it depends.
So
religiously, I think, just to, put the glaze on this topic.
Glaze on it.
Yeah. Religiously, the answer, if you truly believe it, should be no. They shouldn't be private. If you're an atheist, the answer should be probably it doesn't matter, but it also kind of depends.
So to go along with what we've been talking about, the profound transformation later in life, and should you be upfront with people. Final question with that. Can one truly change their worldview, or are conversions often emotional reactions?
So there is a prominent public atheist figure named Ayaan Hirsi Ali who did just that. She converted to Christianity and just baffled some people.
Yeah.
And it's tough because interviews with her by what used to be fellow atheists, they've interviewed her post-conversion, and she converted because she was very depressed, on the verge of suicide, and not in a happy place in life, and she prayed. She prayed, and it worked. And
what does that mean? It worked.
She was lifted out of the depression. She no longer felt suicidal ideations. You know, she just went to a better spot in life upon prayer. So, I mean, if you're an atheist, an outspoken atheist against religion, as she was, to get to the point in your life where you pray, I already feel like speaks volumes onto where you have to be in life.
Right.
To be so desperate to do something that you have publicly denounced as an illusion. So, to get to that point, no one's arguing that she wasn't in a terrible spot in life. And no one else, well, there are people like this, and they are just awful people. But anyone of sound mind also is nothing but happy that she got out of that by any method, you know, regardless of if it's prayer or not. And many people question, like, does she truly believe, the truth claims, the truth value of the claims of Christianity, does she really actually believe them? Does she truly believe that a guy was dead for 3 days and came back to life? And it's not clear. It's not clear.
I have an interesting little tidbit on this. So, there's been a lot of grief and turmoil in my family, and we might do a video on this later. But I want to zero in on something I've heard throughout the last couple weeks that this is really reminding me of. And it's people talking about faith and how faith to them is, in their words, how I get through the day. I don't know how they say, I don't know how I could get through this pain without my faith. Or faith is the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. And it's, to a religious minded person, they're thinking, wow, what profound power my faith has within me. But what it sounds like to maybe somebody else is, I need to believe in something to keep going. You know what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, definitely.
And it makes you wonder. It's like, are you stronger because of your faith? Or are you weaker and your faith helps you not be so weak?
Are you weaker because you need the crutch of faith?
That's
an interesting question.
That's not trying to be a bash on religion. It's just not. But if I went to you and I said, I struggle to get out of bed in the morning, so I need to drink a lot of alcohol to feel okay. That's how I feel normal.
Yeah.
You would say, you know, that's a thing that you need checked out or something. Now, there's a lot of things you could.
If you say that to a Christian in their faith, that sounds like something you need to get checked out. That's never gonna fly.
Now, granted, you know, alcohol has different issues, and just being religious isn't going to negatively impact your health. But it's more of the idea of, Is this a crutch for you? Is this how you deal with grief or how you deal with hardship? What is required for a shift in a worldview is not a profound emotional experience, but an actual shift in your knowledge and your understanding. It's not, I was depressed and now I'm not. It's the fundamental way I view the world, I have reasoned, is different than the way I once felt it was.
See, I mostly agree, but I think that's a bit of a projection on how we interact with religion onto others. Because honestly, see, what you just described is exactly my relationship with religion. Religion makes truth claims. And whether those claims are false or actually true is integral to me having faith in a religion or in being convinced by religion. It is integral. And to be honest, I don't know if that's true of most people.
Well,
It
I mean,
really. Go ahead.
The entire idea of at least Christianity is the idea of faith. So one could make the argument that analysis and reasoning are not a requirement for faith. Faith is simply a belief in something that you can't see. So from that way, you can be religious without truly having to parse out your beliefs in the natural world of how the natural world is and came to be. But what the question is, at least in the first part, is can one truly change their worldview? I think it depends on how you define your worldview.
I mean, the quick face value answer is yeah. But because, we see conversions to and fro of from religion all the time. So,
but this is an interesting question. Do you think changing your worldview has to come with reason? Because one could say I changed my worldview to believe that the world is flat, and that's not. How do you want to say that? That is my new worldview, but it comes with no further analysis.
So, can someone change their worldview without reason? I don't. In theory, maybe, but in practice, that will never happen because someone doesn't change their worldview without reason. Even if that reason is, I'm in a new friend group that believes this now. Right?
Sure. I guess what I mean by reason is more of a analytical sense.
Rationality behind the belief.
You
okay.
Because if not changing through rationalization, you would then be changing through an emotional reaction. In theory.
But can you have an emotional experience so powerful that goes against your rational intuition so much that you stop believing in it?
At what point does it become a delusion?
That's
because
tough.
if you have to, if your, let me make sure I get this right. If your profound emotional reaction to fit a worldview requires the ignoring of rationalization, is that not a delusion?
I would say yes, it is a delusion, but someone, obviously, we know rationally you can believe in Christianity or believe Christianity is false. You can. There are rational stances on both sides of the court. But I mean, it depends. Just to go back to that a little bit, for me, it seems just patently irrational to believe someone died for 3 days and came back to life.
Sure.
But after digging through just so much evidence for and evidence against, Easter Sunday, it's apparent that someone can lean on the evidence one way or the other. So not everyone has my rational thought process. And that isn't to say that if they don't come to my conclusion, it's an irrational thought process. There are rational thought processes that can go different directions, right? Mm-hmm. So let's just go back to someone like Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Her emotional experience was arguably literally life-saving. Mm-hmm. So for someone like her, I don't think, when she says she chooses to believe the truth claims of Christianity, I think that's exactly what we just described. An emotional experience so much more powerful than the rational conclusion of the mind, that it sort of shifts the mindset to where she concludes another thing, though not irrational. If it's to the point of something where you simply cannot rationalize in any way, I think that's a delusion. But you can rationalize Christianity.
Yeah, you can. And I think that would have to be the answer then. I think that there are conversions based purely on emotional reactions. But I think there are certain... Here's my only holdup with this. I think the answer is you can have... Somebody can change their worldview, and I think you might be able to change your worldview accompanied by, or I'll say prompted by, an emotional reaction. But I think there needs to be deeper thought. I think that if you strictly have an emotional reaction and you immediately change your entire identity,
based purely on the emotion that you just felt.
That is purely emotion. But if you have a profound emotional reaction and then come to the conclusion that it has to be because of this reason or another, and that changes your worldview, then you have truly and successfully changed your worldview. Only prompted by an emotional reaction.
Right. Yeah. The emotional reaction was simply more data to add to the data pool of worldviews, except it's just such a heavyweight piece of data, personally, that it weighs one side quite greatly. So So I do think the answer is yes when going from atheism to religion, but I will say there pretty much was no profound emotional experience with my religion to atheism experience. And well, partially because it lasted like 6 years and there wasn't just like a moment of, conversion, so to speak. But that I would say was a total change of worldviews.
Yeah. I think it's I mean, we've said this a billion times. The burden of proof is not on the atheist.
That
So
that phrase gets tossed around pretty frequently.
So it's because it takes something that cannot be known, faith, to believe in something Christian based. You are more prone to needing to rely or needing to be prompted, as we just mentioned, by an emotional reaction. But in order to reject and rely on the natural world as your source of knowledge, you don't need an emotional reaction to get there.
Right.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
There are deconversions certainly do come with huge emotional reactions sometimes.
Somebody who is devoutly religious, who maybe loses a loved one or some other kind of major tragedy, who could then, based on their emotional reaction to the tragedy, come to the conclusion that there is no God, because why would a God allow this to happen? Mm-hmm. And that would be a deconstruction based on an emotional reaction. Doesn't mean it's invalid. It just means it's
right
prompted.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it can certainly go both ways. But I will say, I think you can get emotional reaction and rationality out of religion. I think it's a heck of a lot tougher to get rationality but not emotional into religion.
Yeah, if you,
at least for me, that's the case.
Are a religious person and you're speaking to somebody, well, let's just do this on the flip side. If a religious person is speaking to either one of us, as we will see whenever we upload. Here's a teaser: religious debate that we have with a devout Christian,
right?
But somebody religious minded talking to either one of us is going to have a heck of a time trying to because we're not emotionally based people for the most part,
right? Trying
to get on our level to reason through Christianity, they're going to have a hard time doing that with people like us,
right? And I'm sure they're out there, the people that got argumented into Christianity. I'm sure they exist, but I can't imagine they're as frequent as someone that has a profound experience that gets them into religion.
We talked about this at one point. This was a while back. This might have even been whatever that first episode on religion we did, which was like episode 3 or something. This might have been that. And I think I brought up like
a long time ago.
when people talk about faith and you'll ask people, why do you have faith? And then they'll say, well, God speaks to me.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it's loosely defined, and it's not for most people, it's not real audible speech. Mm-hmm. It's signs, or as I would call them, coincidences or something like that. Where was I going with that? I was making a point.
You don't get argumented into Christianity.
Right. Yeah. People like that are more susceptible to changing their beliefs based on a profound emotional experience. And who's to say that they're wrong? I am a person who requires something a little bit more analytical in nature.
Right. Something a little bit more not susceptible to human error.
Yeah. I would love to have a profound emotional religious experience.
Dude, yeah, that'd be great.
That would be
Like just to poke another little teaser, I had a debate with a devout Christian. One of the things that came up was what would get me to convert. And I myself said, I don't know. I really don't. Because if it was a religious sort of like profound, God blew up the heavens and said, I am God, I exist. Chances are I'm hallucinating, you know?
Yeah.
It's really tough to know. But that's not the point. God would know what would convince me. He would know.
Yeah. That's
But
true.
he didn't. Yeah. So I won't spoil any more of that debate any more than we already have. So, but yeah, I totally agree. I would love to have whatever requirement of me needed to get into a religion. If that would happen to me, it would have to be something pretty freaking unexplainable, which is very exciting. So if that would happen, that'd be sick. But it hasn't. So like, I'm not going to allow myself to be convinced by something. Not even just allow myself. I just simply can't be convinced by something that is so rife with human error in regards to other people's explanations of being convinced by this thing.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, and on a personal note, when I was religious and would pray, I always felt lesser than as a Christian because I felt that I didn't have profound experiences with God on a personal level. So I would pray and I would say, reveal yourself in some way. Give me a sign you're there. Something. And because I see people in my community who can see you, maybe not physically see, but can see that you are there working in their lives or can hear your voice or know that you are present. I want that same attention. I want that same reassurance.
yeah.
And it never came.
Right.
Which is very interesting to me. Well, we've been on this particular topic for 45 minutes, so let's go ahead and just scoot on over to the next question here. Okay. Your religion teaches that only people who believe as you do will enter heaven. This includes the idea that your kind, moral atheist friend is going to hell. Do you secretly believe your friend is doomed, even if you never say it? Do you secretly believe your friend is doomed, even if you never say it? What is it?
I mean,
getting at there?
You would have to, wouldn't you?
That's not really a functional question here. If you are a Christian,
you would in fact believe that your friend is doomed. It wouldn't be secretly. As long as he knows that you're a Christian. In the same way that we know other Christians think we are doomed, they would know that the subject here would think that they're doomed.
Yeah, if you're a Christian and your friend is an atheist, you would believe they're going to hell. There would be no secret about it.
Right. That's why I'm saying you kind of have to think that. There's no secret. Even, yeah. We can talk about if you should say that they're doomed or not. We can talk about that, but there's certainly no secret that they do believe that you're doomed.
And the answer to that question, if you're a Christian, is maybe not that you should tell people that they're doomed, but you should.
If you're part of the Westbrook Baptist Church, then you should.
Well, those people are just off their rocker, if you ask me, and anybody with sense. Yeah. But so I don't think there's much to be gained from that question. So the next one is it immoral to believe in a God that would damn good people? That is a huge question.
That is, yeah. That's a huge one. Is it immoral to believe in a God that would damn good people? Well, if you believe in this God, you don't believe That you believe that the standard of what a good person is has already been fallen short of from the moment of birth. So you would have to believe that you yourself are also not a good person. You have to believe everyone is not a good person in the eyes of the bar that this God has set. So just because if you are of this faith, just because you might see someone as a good person, an earthly good person, like I said, in the higher morality of God, everyone is a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't morally and God is saving these people, and he has no obligation to. It is a gift that he is saving them.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't believe that that you have faith in a God that is sending good people to hell. You wouldn't believe that that's the case.
God is sending evil people to hell.
Right. And
by very
the only
being
exactly, and the only reason I'm not going to hell, at me as the Christian, is because I'm receiving a extremely gracious gift from God. So,
but as an outsider,
as an outsider, it's kind of cut and dry. Yeah, that's kind of immoral.
That leads pretty nicely into this next question then. Can you hold that belief and still call yourself compassionate? Let's say you're the Christian who, well, if you're the Christian that your God is sending people to hell that are generally considered good people, and you're cool with that, from an outsider's perspective, I don't know if you could be considered compassionate. Granted, you could make the argument that you're not doing the sending to hell.
Yeah, but you're believing in the guy that does, as the highest moral being imaginable.
It is true. If you accept God as the ruler of the universe, you are at least supposed to subscribe to his moral authority.
Right.
And that moral authority, in at least certain aspects of Scripture, does not condone homosexuality. And therefore, can you be a Christian and truly be compassionate when it comes to like very good, kind-hearted gay people, as an example? Or will there always be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not hatred. That feels odd to put that there, because there's a lot of Christians that don't hate gay people.
Right. I mean,
but
as time goes, there's much more just full-blown left-leaning Christian churches being erected. So, I mean...
But if you go by the book, which you're supposed to, those people are still going to hell.
Mm-hmm. Right. So can you be considered a compassionate person?
Or at least I think they would anyway. I don't... That's how it was taught to me, so that's how I'm...
right. Me too.
Calling it out, but I don't know if they've either... Maybe that's okay now because they... Well, no, it's not. There's no way that the Christian church has come back on that.
I was going to say that, like I said, most denominations know, as far as I understand, as far as I'm aware. But like I said, there are some full on like new denominations are popping up by the freaking billions.
So, there was There's
That's
a
an
church
exaggeration.
while back that would hang pride flags outside their church.
Right,
Now,
yeah,
the rest of the Christian faith didn't like that too much, but that happened.
Right. I mean, once you get to that point though, where it's pretty obvious, the Bible pretty obviously and coherently condemns a man laying with a man as if it were a woman.
Yeah.
Like that, there's not really any ambiguity.
Right.
So at that point, when you get these, pride flag churches, you could you could say that like they're doing the whole like pick what you like and leave what you don't like thing with Christianity,
Right.
which many denominations get accused of that. And it being Christianity being a sort of shopping mall and picking what you like out of and making a religion out of it. And you know what? If I could do that, maybe I would believe. If I could do that and actually believe, full-blown believe the religion, shoot, maybe that would be the religion for me. But the fact that some denominations are accused of that, the sort of cherry picking from the Bible thing, itself is an argument against the entire religion as a whole. So
yeah,
I can't unfortunately just believe in that. But where was I going with that?
Let's I don't know where you're going with that.
Me
Let's put a wrap on this question here. Can you hold that belief, which that being God, your God,
a Christian,
sends good people to hell? Yeah. Can you hold that belief and still call yourself truly compassionate?
Back to that question. Frick, man. Like I did just explain how you can mental gymnastic your way into thinking that this is a great, profound gift. The fact that you're not going to hell, right?
Right.
Like you can mental gymnastic your way into that. It's possible. So yeah, you can. In fact, hundreds of thousands of millions of people do believe that, in fact. Wholeheartedly. They truly believe that. But from the outsider's view,
I think there's no question that these people can call themselves truly compassionate. Because that's what the question is worded. Can you still call yourself truly compassionate? But the question is if that's an accurate claim.
If it's an accurate claim, I mean, to a Christian, yes. To an atheist, no.
I suppose maybe it's that cut and dry.
It might be that simple. Because to us, it's really hard to ignore the glaring issue of maybe this God is kind of a dickhead, right? For creating the beings with the capacity to do this unforgivable sin, do this unforgivable thing that condemns all the rest of them as well, right? Even ones that haven't been born yet. That kind of seems like a dickhead thing, but you can mental gymnastic your way around it. So I think, but compassionate. You can still be a compassionate person, for sure. But
even if you subscribe to a higher authority that the rest of the world might call non-compassionate, is there a word for that? It's not
uncompassionate. I don't know.
It's not incompassionate. That's not a word.
What's the opposite of compassionate?
What
Google
is the opposite?
Is it just uncompassionate?
Of
rude? I don't know. Discompassionate? What's it saying here?
compassionate. Opposite. indifferent, heartless. Well, that's not.
Oh,
That's
heartless.
the opposite of being compassionate. Uncompassionate.
Uncompassionate. Okay. No. An uncompassionate God. That was tough.
Was I saying something?
Yeah, you were in the middle of a sentence.
God.
Yeah, right in the middle of a sentence.
Well, we just need to just scrap that.
All right, throw the
because
sentence away.
It's gone.
All right. Well, I think it can be reduced to something as cut and dry as if you're a Christian, yeah, if you're not, no. It's an uncompassionate view to hold. You can be a compassionate person. I think everybody would agree on that, but from an atheist perspective, uncompassionate view to hold. Christian perspective, the most compassionate view to hold.
Well, I think we'll skip this one. I'll go ahead and read it, but we basically already answered this one. Your religious grandmother is dying and asks if you're still a believer. She wants reassurance that you'll be reunited in the afterlife. We kind of already talked about that.
Yeah.
With the parents. And I even brought this specific example up without knowing what was coming up about your grandmother. Is this, oh, you still have your faith? You know, I said that.
She's on her deathbed.
I think for the sake of time, we can probably skip this, but I think to transfer the conclusion we brought earlier, I don't think anybody would frown upon you for maybe dodging the question or not being as authentic in that moment as maybe you would be otherwise.
You can't let grandma die thinking you're going to hell. You can't do that. That's
not cool.
That you could argue that itself is an immorality to just allow that to happen.
Yeah, it's not.
So
that's not cool, bro.
Yeah, that's not cash money.
So yeah, lie to your grandmother. We'll just go ahead and skip that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Conclusion: lie to your grandmother.
All right. You don't believe in God, but you love the traditions: Christmas, church music, moral stories. You call yourself a cultural Christian and attend church for the community. Is this dishonest or a valid form of identity?
This is actually one of the biggest forces against religion in history has converted millions due to his books. Richard Dawkins is this. He's a cultural Christian, self-proclaimed. He loves the Christian ethos. Like he's a fan of it. He, of course, is not a fan of its truth claims. But yeah, he is a cultural Christian. I think the argument that most Christians are this, I don't think is a completely invalid argument. Invalid.
Yeah, so here's the thing. In a lot of ways, I would consider myself this. I would never say this. I would never say I'm a cultural Christian. That, to me, feels odd. I don't like the way that sounds. That's for whatever reason. But I enjoy Christmas. I enjoy, Christian contemporary music at times. And who doesn't love a good moral story?
Right.
We talk about Jesus all the time.
Yeah.
You and I.
Yeah, we might be cultural Christians.
And it's not even just like we're atheists and we're talking about how stupid religion is. No, we talk about religious text and its implications and how you can apply it. And we talk about these things. I think you and I, as
we could be described
as fundamentally non-religious as we come across, I think you and I are perfect definitions of cultural Christians.
Right.
Well, at least I don't know how you feel
don't do
about
the
Christmas
church
and
thing.
in church music, but
But
and we don't attend church. So maybe not perfect, I would say. But as far as knowing and appreciating scripture, I think we kind of fit that bill in a lot of ways.
yeah.
But still, I don't like calling myself a cultural Christian because that feels odd. For the life of me, I could not tell you who it was. But there was a guy online who had like a talk show, and he called himself a cultural Jew. That's what he called himself. And I don't remember who it was, and I don't remember his beliefs. But even that always struck me as odd. It's like, what does that even mean? Cultural Jew. What is that?
So I don't really know that much about Judaism, other than the fact that it was the religion that preceded Christianity. So like I don't even know what like a Jewish church, Jewish customs, all this stuff is like. I really don't know the practices. Like I don't know that much about Judaism at all.
So I just looked up what a cultural Jew is. Term used to describe somebody who identifies with Jewish culture, heritage, and community, but may not identify with religious aspects of Judaism.
Okay, it's like,
So I mean, yeah, that makes sense. But what? I
So
just
what are they-
would be really curious what culture, heritage, and community community is obvious, but culture and heritage they would be wanting to be a part of, but without the belief.
see, that's what I'm talking about. Like you and I, obviously, because we know Christianity deeply, we know what being involved in Christianity without holding the belief is. Like it's appreciating scripture, knowing scripture, reading scripture, going to church, church music, Christmas holidays, all this stuff. Like that's the culture, right? Judaism has all that stuff too. I just don't know what it is because I don't know anything about Judaism.
This is interesting. I'm on a thread right now, a Reddit thread, and people are talking about this, and people are talking about how a lot of the times this is people who by heritage or by lineage stem from Jewish culture, but aren't believers. So they still ethnically or by heritage are Jewish.
They're still Jewish,
a lot of ways.
right?
But they're not
Judeo Christian.
They're not practicing in the same way that other people might practice. So they culturally are Jewish. So what were the question that we were in? Right. So the question was, is this dishonest or a valid form of identity? I think it's a valid form of identity. I think is the way.
I feel like it could only be dishonest if you're like withholding or lying about your true beliefs.
It's how you present yourself. Because if somebody asks you about your faith and you say, well, I'm not necessarily a believer, but I just really appreciate this community and I want to be a part of this community. You're not being dishonest at all. You are
right
being upfront about your intentions.
If Richard Dawkins can go to church and call himself a cultural Christian when he has done more against religion than pretty much anybody inside any church he goes to for religion, no one would call him dishonest.
Right. But so then to move on to the next question then, can someone be a part of a religion without faith? Now that is where I draw the line.
No, because I don't think so.
Because you can call yourself a cultural Christian, but you're not a part of the faith. You're not a part of the religion. The religion requires faith.
Right.
We know that to be true. And if you have no faith, you have no religion. You can appreciate whatever you want to appreciate, but you cannot be religious without the faith, in my opinion.
Yeah. You can't. So reread the question.
Can someone be part of a religion without faith? Or you mean the original question?
Yeah, it was that question. Okay. Yeah, no. I definitely don't think so. Without faith. So I mean, some would say that if you simply just analyze all the evidence and look at the arguments, it doesn't require faith because it's the rational position to hold. And are obviously still part of the religion.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I would say that 99% of these people, if they're honest, would also say that you cannot prove or disprove for certain the existence of God. So I guess faith in that respect is the last hurdle, the last requirement there.
I mean, even within the context of religion, we go to Scripture, and Scripture itself proclaims that faith is a requirement for.
Right. Yeah. So
we don't even have to speculate at that point.
Yeah. And that's for Christianity. But yeah, I think that's pretty easy. No, you have to have faith to be in the religion. You can't be faithless religious.
Yeah. So where is the line between appreciation and appropriation in faith? And I think it's right there. I think it's
yeah.
I think it's when you claim that you are a member, a true member of a certain religion without faith.
Yeah, that's a pretty, I think, easy line. It might not be an easy line for other people to tell if you've crossed or not, but it's immediately apparent within yourself to know which side of the line you're on.
Yeah.
You either believe it or you don't, whether you're doing all the actions necessary or not.
Right. Well, and with that is the last question we have for today. We're about right up on time here. Let us know what you think about any of the things we talked about today. Like I said, we teased heavily this religion debate. If you liked this kind of content, boy howdy, you're going to love this debate.
Right.
And we will talk to you next week.
See you.